The Facebook React team builds and supports a browser-based extension for Chrome and Firefox that gives us developers a clear view into what's happening in our running browser-based React apps. Why do we need a clear view? It's because the browser does not know anything about our React code. Same with its standard debugging tools. It primarily speaks HTML. Our React app does ultimately render HTML, but trying to understand how to map our React code to what the browser renders is extremely hard, and without the React tools, almost impossible. Let's look at our layout component and talk about it. What's great about this is that because of the JSX syntax, we can seamlessly mix what we typically think of as HTML elements and React components together. The difference between the two is simply that the components like header, menu, and footer start with a capital letter, and the primitive HTML, just div here, starts with lowercase. The syntax and rules for using them together are identical. To us, both are just building blocks, or as I like to refer to them, React elements of the page being rendered. Once React renders the page, all our React component definitions are lost, and primarily what we see through our debugging tools is HTML. Let's browse to the speakers page of our app that uses this layout component. Open up the Chrome DevTools and navigate to the first tab, which Chrome calls Elements. Since the Dev tool knows nothing about React, these are just HTML elements. Let's right-click on our actual rendered header of the page, choose Inspect, and that takes us to what our Dev tool sees. It's an HTML tag with a nested body, followed by divs nested 6 deep. How can we possibly relate that back to our layout component? That's concisely why we have React in Profile. Let's look at the Components tab now. Having built this app together over the past 5 modules, the structure of our app is clear. Ignoring the base components, which are provided by the Next.js framework, we start with our page component. Through some theme provider component wrapping, we get to the one named Layout component. It has 4 direct children components: header, menu, speakers, and footer. As a side note, if you hover over any components in the list, the corresponding component rendered in the browser is highlighted. Double-clicking on any component lets you zoom in. Double-click again, and it zooms further. Often, you need to go the other way. That is, you want to see what component rendered the one you are looking at. You can click on the rendered by over and over and walk up the component tree to the root of the app, seeing the past properties as you go. At any point, if you want to see the source code of the component, click on the braces in the upper right, which the dev tools call view source for this element, and you are taken directly into the element's JavaScript source by way of the Debugger Source tab. Going back to the Component tab, you can click on the eyeball, and that takes you to the DOM inspector for what component rendered. There are 2 more features of the React debugger that can be very helpful. Clicking on the debugger icon automatically logs the selected component to the console, giving you all the drill-down capabilities you'd get with any JavaScript object. Also, under the Settings gear icon, you can filter the components you see, which means if you have a huge component tree, you can whittle it down to something that is manageable to look at. The last thing to mention about the Components tab is that included is a very nice props editor. Though what you see in the props display does not look like something you can edit, you actually can. Click on the props value and you can change it, and the change is instantly reflected in the browser. You can also add new props to a component that can not only be primitive values, but any parsable JSON object can also be added. Let's move on now, and in the next clip, we'll take a look at the Profiler tab with the specific goal of looking for both slow rendering and unnecessary rendering components.